Hi, and welcome back to Vancouver Bass Players. Today I'll be talking to Meaghan Williams, who's a bass player who plays with me in the Vancouver Opera. We often share a stand and share pencils and share bowings and that kind of thing. And Meaghan recently played a bass concerto written by composer and bassist Mark Haney, and that piece is called Placentia Bay, 1941. It's got a really interesting story to it as well. And so without further ado, here's Meaghan Williams. Hi there.
Hi,
How are you today?
doing great, thanks. Beautiful
Excellent.
day in British Columbia.
It sure is. Is that are those lilacs I see behind you? I'm learning my flowers.
They are. They
Good for
are.
me. I got one right. So yeah, so we were just chatting a little bit previous to this, and I'd love to know a little bit about who you studied with and what drew you to the bass, and what your influences were, what kind of music that inspires you, and then a little bit later we'll do a quick bass lesson, and I know you've got something planned for me that'll be really interesting. So maybe let's start with your background. I think if I remember, you're from Newfoundland originally.
I am.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I was really lucky back in the day in Newfoundland. We had really, really strong music programs in the schools. And we had a string program in my elementary school. So I started on the violin initially. I played the piano too a little bit. And somewhere in there, I met a bass player for the first time. And I was that little kid on third violin that couldn't stop turning around because there was this sound behind me and I could feel it in the floor,
Yeah.
feel it in my chair. And that was pretty much it. Game over. I studied violin for another few years after that. But, once you start playing the bass, kind of get hooked.
I agree.
Uh, so I would say really, really influential music teachers early on, like string teachers, choral teachers. You guys know who you are. We're friends on Facebook. Huge debt of gratitude. Shout out to classroom music teachers. And for sure, studying the piano has informed my playing. But really started getting serious about the bass in high school and had the amazing opportunity to play with the Newfoundland Symphony when I was young. So, started churning through that orchestral repertoire pretty early on, which was great. And then was fortunate to move to Toronto and study with Joel Corrington for a number of years.
Wow,
So
lucky you.
doesn't get much better than that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after I graduated in Toronto, I moved to Europe and studied with a number of teachers there. Worked with Duncan McTeer in London and Michael Wolf at the University for the Arts in Berlin, and had the chance to study with people like Janis Axela, who's principal bass at the Berlin Philharmonic. So lots of really, really great teachers and a huge variety of perspectives, which I think has also helped my playing, not just kind of going down one road, getting a broad range of information from really phenomenal players.
Wow, that's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious. I started out playing French bow with my teacher Monty Montjoy in Edmonton, and then when I met Ken Friedman, it was presented to me. He basically lent me his German bow and said, "Hey, check this out for a while and see if you don't like it." And the power of that sound really drew me in, and the ergonomics and a bunch of things about it really drew me in. I still play a little bit of French bow, but I'm wondering, did you have that same kind of conversion experience?
Can you hear that?
I can hear my traffic in my background. That's what I can hear.
Okay. There's a cat yelling in the background.
Oh, hi, kitty.
We might have to edit that out.
Nah, probably not.
Okay. Um, okay.
So I
Class.
think probably with Joel was maybe where you might have switched. I know he himself switched, and I'm old enough to remember hearing those stories out of Toronto My teacher at the time was a little bit horrified to hear, because that whole Toronto section was French bow, and to hear that Joel was experimenting back in the day, and you know, now of course he's completely converted to German bow, and kind of an interesting hold as well.
So when I auditioned for U of T to study with Joel, he was taking basically only German bow players. So I was playing French bow at the time, and he said, if you want to study with me, I'm going to encourage you to switch to German bow.
Yeah.
And I kind of gone back and forth because I was working with whatever was available through like my high school, you know, what instrument and bow I could get my hands on. So I've worked with both, and I teach both because I have some experience with both. But basically, since I made the switch in my undergrad, I've gone down the German bow route. And I think for me, there's no going back. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I don't want to get into that.
No. Yeah.
But also, it's really interesting when you have a student that shows a clear preference one way or the other.
Right.
And I think that's really kind of a fun process to watch if you give them the option of working with both at the beginning, and then they get to decide, right?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I always went from the idea of what I know as a bass player is this way of playing, you know, and I could work with somebody on French, but really for me it's about getting the most out of your teacher, and all my bag of tricks that I got from my teacher are the one style really, and a lot of the old French bow stuff I don't really remember so much. So did you ever experiment? I know Joel tunes in fifths now, so I'm just wondering if you ever tried, you know, different kinds of tunings or something like that, because, you know, obviously with the bass we have solo tuning where we're up a tone and we have A, E, B, F sharp instead of G, D, A, E. And anybody who's played solo repertoire will know about that. But the new thing seems to be a new trend is people tuning completely in fifths, just like a cello, but up an octave. So I'm curious if you've experimented with that. I know I haven't. So
I haven't, but I know a number of players who have. And actually, I've seen the same player on the same bass. Oh, heard the same player on the same bass in fourths and in fifths. So I can definitively tell you from my experience that resonance that Joel talks about when he's advocating for tuning in fifths is totally a real thing. But there are some cognitive hurdles that you need to get around in order to make the switch. And I had so much to learn from Joel when I was studying with him that I just stuck with the fourths. And maybe at some point I would experiment with fifths, but I only have one bass. And, you know, when you got rehearsal or a show coming up, it's hard to go back and forth.
Yeah, and it's years of habit as well. You know, for me, it's the scales feel a certain way and arpeggios feel a certain way. And it's sort of like would be like learning. I'm trying to remember now in typing what that second Dvorak. There's a Dvorak keyboard, which is actually faster than the QWERTY keyboard if you're a real typist. And I did experiment with it, and I think that would be the way it would feel like using a completely different keyboard, and all the words you know how to spell already come out wrong. You know, I remember trying to play, at least on my electric bass, I was trying to play in fifths, and I'd often hit, you know, the dominant seven instead of the tonic because it was a couple positions away from what I was expecting.
Yeah, especially under duress, you know.
Yeah.
When you're under stress in performance or something, you have one of those like little brain things. You go for the G string and it's not a G string. I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the hearing part for me too. I don't have anything like perfect pitch, but just, you know, the way the instrument feels and sounds in solo tuning. You know, I would sort of, when I was playing solo music, I would leave the bass in that tuning as long as I could to try and get used to the feeling and just the way the instrument responded. It felt like a smaller instrument somehow than in normal orchestra tuning. So all the bass players that I've had on here so far have given me a little demo lesson. And so I thought maybe the tuning would be your chance to go ahead and grab your bass, and we
Totally.
can talk about, because I know you're working on a new piece, and I love the fact to find out what people are practicing and how they're getting better as well, especially when they're an established player like you are. So maybe you could walk us through what you're working with your new tuning.
So this COVID time is a strange new reality in that what would have been a very busy spring is not all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw another brick in the wall come up on my calendar several times, and I thought, oh, I'll be hanging out with Meaghan in the pit. And yeah,
yeah,
it's too bad that didn't happen.
well, hopefully we'll be back at it sooner rather than
Yes.
later.
Yeah, that's right.
But I wanted to take this time where you're not running from gig to gig and kind of look at it as an opportunity to try a few different things. So I've started working on a new Canadian piece by a female composer named Veronika Krausus. And she's got the bass tuned scordatura. So I'm neither in fourths nor in fifths. And this is a technique that you see, more often on cello or violin.
Yes.
So the fifth cello suite uses it. And so orchestral repertoire, Mahler 4, the concertmaster solo, or Saint-Saëns Danse Macabre, they have the violin detuned effectively to sound, kind of twangy and more devilish. So what I've got going on here is a G string tuned up to an A. And if I were to perform this piece, I would probably put a solo tuning string on this,
Right.
just to get that extra bit of brightness. And then what's normally a D string is tuned to a D flat. And what's normally an A string is tuned to a G flat. So I've kind of got the sixth and a fifth, and then
Okay.
I C on the bottom.
Could you play those strings open? I know you played the harmonics, and people might be getting the idea that it's even higher in the cello register, but if you could play the open ones, then we'd hear the open pitch. Wow, that's really an interesting, ominous sound all by itself.
Yeah, and the history of the instrument, we've always been experimenting with different tunings, right? Even the shift from the Viennese tuning, which was very much the standard for a while there, to fourths-ish. And now there are lots of players experimenting in fifths. It's kind of fun to, take a new perspective on the instrument. Although there's a little bit of, when you see an octave printed on the page, but the sound you're generating is not an octave, there's some time that you have to spend to kind of work through that mentally.
Well, that's an interesting topic there, because from what I know about this, there are sort of two schools of thought. And so when you're working on this new piece, is it notated as if you would be fingering normally on the bass and then you just hear the notes that are detuned differently? Or is it notated at pitch so that you'd have to actually work out, I'll just ask, I'll let you answer.
So, very clever composer. She wrote the piece originally for bass tuned in fifths, but she has also a version for bass tuned in fourths. And then accompanying that is a score that says sounding. So you can always refer, if there's ever a question,
Perfect.
to what she's actually looking for. So what's written is open D, which sounds D flat, and open A, which is sounding G flat. So even though, if I'm playing a G natural, which is sounding A, and a G natural on the bottom, it's never going to sound like an octave.
Right.
And then in the middle of the piece, she throws in that you tune the D flat back up to a D.
Of course.
Just
like you do.
add in another little challenge in there.
Well, I can see that for harmonic reasons as well. You know, if you're basically playing sort of in an F sharp minor sort of tuning, then having that changing to the D string would give you all those harmonics, including A and F sharp, and so that I can see there might be a really good reason for that switch in the middle. And a semitone between friends on the fly, probably not super challenging to get to.
Well, I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Do you want to play any of it, or maybe just demo the sound a little bit more for us?
Let's see.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So looking forward to digging into that in more detail.
Yeah, it's great to have a project during this time. You know, I've been asking all the bass players about your tips for getting through COVID, and I think this is mine. This idea of interviewing all the bass players I know in Vancouver, and even some I don't know that well yet, just to sort of create some feeling of community. But also, yeah, having a musical project is a great topic. And I know that you and I are both keeping up our running, so that's good for us, right? You said you ran how many kilometers this morning already?
Oh, it's 8-ish.
8-ish.
Yeah.
That's a good day. That's a long run for me for sure. And so those, you know, keeping your health together and being outside is very, very safe as long as you're distancing. So that's one that I've kept up really well. And, you know, our friend Warren Long, who I'm interviewing later, I should say Jay Warren Long, because that J is important. We're going to be probably talking about running and that kind of thing as well. And that was one of the things that when I met him, he got across to me. It was like, keep your health together, because the bass playing is really so demanding. And if you're fit and, you know, then all the muscles are working the way they need to be, and you can sort of locate which muscles you need for bass playing and relax the other ones. Right?
100%. And Warren is a testament to that, because he takes the health and wellness stuff very seriously, and he's had an enormously long career. So he's right.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. You know, I was also going to ask you, we've been at it a good while here, and I think this is that lesson already is really going to be great for everyone to see. So I was going to ask, are you teaching during this time? Are you taking students?
I'm teaching online, which is a whole new world.
Right on. Yeah.
It's good. A lot of the students are still trying to, you know, hit those benchmarks and do their Royal Conservatory exams and meet those goals that they've set out for themselves, you know, do little performances and stuff like that. But it's not the same as teaching in person.
That's for sure.
I do miss, you know, being in the room and being able to hear those little tiny subtle things and make those little corrections. So I'm really enjoying being able to keep up with the teaching, but also looking forward to seeing my students in person again.
Yeah, well, there's that personal touch, right? And that way that you inspire students just by walking into the studio sometimes can be the most inspiring thing, where a student will kind of snap into gear and go, oh, okay, this is what we do in this space. This is where we work on bass playing, and there's a different kind of focus to that, rather than being on a computer where you play video games and answer email and all kinds of other things. So I definitely, you know, feel those same aspects. Is it okay if I share your contact information in case anybody'd like to study with you?
100%. Absolutely.
Okay, why don't you tell me, and I'll make a note. I'm and then I can share it on the video afterwards. I'll put an overlay on this one.
Sure. My email is not that creative. It's meaghan.williams@gmail.com.
Okay,
And you
great.
can also find me through the Vancouver Musicians Association website.
Great.
And for any amateur players out there who are looking for opportunities this summer, I teach at the West Coast Amateur Music Society camp in Squamish, where I know you have also taught. And they're looking at doing an online camp this summer. So if people are interested in doing kind of an intensive, we might be able to pull something together in July-ish for that. So that's West Coast Amateur Music Society, which is normally located in beautiful Squamish, British Columbia. But if it's going online, you can do it from anywhere.
Yeah, that's a wonderful camp run by great people. And that was held up at that Quest University. And it's kind of an amazing place to hang out with fresh classrooms and built in the round where there's always a view every time you take a lesson or teach a class. So maybe they'll put up some photos of that to inspire people to feel like they're actually there. But that's great. That's a great opportunity to study with you as well. And what are the dates for that again?
Ooh.
Oh, that's okay. We'll find it by WCAMS, the Wickhams, and I'll put the link on there so people can enroll as well and get some bass lessons.
Yeah, I think it's the third week in July.
Third week in July, yeah, that's coming up. Well, excellent. So it's been great to chat with you, Meaghan. Is there anything you'd like to add as a final note? Anything you want to share that we didn't talk about today? I know I sent you a lot of other questions that we might touch on, but these ones they're fairly short. So yeah, let me know if there's something else you want to add.
Well, we talked about a number of things that I think are really important for bass players. The health and wellness component.
Yeah.
I would highly encourage any young bass players to prioritize that and pick an activity that's symmetrical, like running or swimming or yoga, and really double down on that to make sure that you can have a nice long career.
Yeah, and you mentioned the symmetrical. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. This is a Zoom thing where, we only one person can speak, and normal conversation, we interrupt each other all the time. So yeah, the symmetrical nature, that's huge with bass playing. People forget that your one arm is up and your other arm might be down and your shoulders might not be level and you're leaning and all kinds of things like that. So activities that use both sides of the body equally, and including when you weight train, it's really important to be focusing on getting both sides going. My old teacher had a set of anti-bass playing exercises that she had me do all through high school, and it really, really helped with opening up the shoulders because we're so used to kind of leaning forward. So I just wanted to amplify your point about that finding things that are symmetrical, like running and swimming and yoga, for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to give a shout out to is the Canadian Music Centre. I have been digging into some of their resources that they've got posted on their website and connecting with Canadian composers, mostly with regards to solo double bass repertoire. But such a great resource for people to check out. Living composers. I mean, people you can actually talk to when you have questions about what they've written. And so much repertoire to explore there. So if you're looking for a good COVID project, I can highly recommend that. And I'm not sure what will come of it yet, but possibly some sort of digital project.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, the CMC is here in downtown Vancouver, and so that's really great. And I'm sure, given the availability of PDFs now and how easy they are to transmit, there'll be a good share of information there that people can dive into. So yeah, living composers like Mark Haney, who wrote the solo piece that you just played with the symphony up in the Okanagan. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Meaghan, for stopping by today, and good luck with the tuning and the new piece that you're working on, and Wickham's and the rest of it. And it's just been great to get a chance to chat with you again.
Thanks, Laurence. Really appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of your series. It's a fantastic project.
Thanks so much, Meaghan. Okay, we'll talk again soon. Take care.